Um, so good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today and giving up your time to learn more about the sign bylaws process in the City of Markham. I'm pleased to be presenting the topic of understanding the sign bylaw and approval process. As Wynne mentioned, my name is Krista Miller. I'm the Supervisor of Zoning with the City of Markham's Building Standards Department. Joining me today, I'll follow her lead and call Daniel. Daniel P. Is the Manager of Client Engagement and Administration. Daniel's team is responsible for administrative aspects of the sign permit process, amongst other things, such as coordinating the intake and issuance of a permit, calculating required fees, etc. My team, the zoning examiners, they will perform plans review and ensure that the sign is, located in the correct location on the property, meets the size requirements, etc. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank our friends in the Economic Development and Culture team for assisting us with this webinar and the promotion and the organization of today's event. So moving right into things, we've got a number of topics to cover today. The sign bylaw, bylaw 2002-94, required approvals, planning your signage, how to apply, timelines and fees, what happens or what to do if your sign doesn't comply, and who you should contact if you have any questions. All signs are regulated through Sign Bylaw 2002-94. Excuse me. This is also known as the Sign Bylaw. To obtain a copy of this bylaw, you can visit our website and use the link on your screen. You can also use your favorite search bar, whether that be Google, Yahoo, whatever. It's available in that way. If you type the word sign bylaw 2002-94, Markham, some combination of those words, you'll find the bylaw in that way as well. It's a PDF document, it's text searchable, so it's very easy to sort of navigate and control, search your way through that document should you need to. And the bylaw applies to all signs. So whether they be ground signs, wall signs, temporary mobiles, banners, etc., all regulations are found in this one convenient document. There are two paths that you might take to get approval of your sign within the City of Markham. And the focus of today's presentation is going to be on item number 1. This is the process for permanent signs, things like ground signs, wall signs, canopy or awning signs, signs that project from the wall. Essentially, if your sign is attached in a fixed location on the ground through a post and foundation system, or you're attaching it to the main building, you're going to be coming through this process, the sign permit approval process. The other path, which we will not be focusing on today, is the licensing approval. This is for temporary signs, things like a banner for a grand opening or a special event, or a mobile or A-frame sign that you might put out in front of your business at the start of the day and take away at the end of the day. Those types of signage are approved and reviewed through our licensing group, and we will provide you some contacts at the end of this presentation, but we'll otherwise not be chatting about those today. So the first question we often receive is, do I need a permit for my sign? And the answer to that question is yes, always in the heritage districts. If you are installing any permanent or development signage, so things like we mentioned, ground signs, wall signs, etc., you must obtain a permit in the heritage districts. This includes instances where you might change the face of the sign only, or you might, be simply removing one board off of a ground sign and replacing it with your business details. All signs, including change of sign face or copy, must get a permit in our heritage districts. So they can be reviewed not just by, my team and ensure size and compliance, but by our heritage group as well. The next step, now that you know you need a permit, is typically planning your sign, knowing where to start. Um, the, the, the first step should be looking to the bylaw, 2002-94, to determine the applicable standards. And these will vary depending on the sign type. They'll include things like the maximum area of the sign or a minimum or maximum height. They may include locational criteria. Um, In addition, as is noted on the slide, in our heritage districts, there will also be additional criteria, things like restriction on illumination. It can only be provided external to the sign in the form of a gooseneck lighting or similar. There's also a prohibition on any digital screens and certain standards or restrictions on not installing signage over, our key architectural features of your heritage building. Further to that, you'll also need to understand certain definitions and items when preparing your sign in order to ensure compliance and success. And one of the most important is the definition of sign area. When you're opening and viewing the bylaw, all defined terms will be available in section 3, and you'll know that they're defined terms because they'll appear in bold throughout the bylaw. So if there's some uncertainty as to what the term might mean, you can look back to section 3. And in particular, sign area is a very important term because it sets out how we will calculate the sign and how we will do that determination at the city level. Important points to note are that it includes the background, and it also includes the area between letters, logos, or shapes if they are individually installed. Visual examples of this are shown on the right-hand side. I think the important takeaway here is that the sign area is more than the individual letter or shape. It also includes that negative space or background, and that should be considered when preparing your sign. One of the most common sign types we receive is wall signs. And I wanted to give a particular nod to those here and how you would calculate or how the city will determine what type of area you're permitted. So you can see in the visual examples, or I hope at the bottom of the screen there, what we will be looking for is to identify how much width you own or your business controls on the face of the wall. And the sign area will be determined on that base. So we will take it as a certain value based on that. And we do not want to see the area of adjacent tenants or the full area of the wall if you are in a multi-tenant building. We want to see your width as shown on the sort of images here. So once you've prepared and planned for your sign, the next steps will be making your application for a sign permit. All applications are accepted and processed online in the City of Markham, and you can see the link to our e-plan portal below. In addition, the city has taken time to create a number of submission standards and guides and tutorials to assist in the preparation of the application submission. And in particular, there is one here available on our website specific to signs that will walk you through exactly what you need to do to make that application. When you log on to our ePlan portal, you'll see something like you see on your screen here. On the left-hand side, you can click Apply for a Permit, and you will have an option for a number of permit types, but in this case, Sign Permit has its own button. You can click that button and start uploading and attaching the various documents you would need and follow those processes to have them come through to the city. You're going to be
Can everybody hear Kristen at this particular time? Thanks, Daniel. I can hear you, but
Okay,
Kristen
so
was cut off a bit.
I
I'm
will
wondering.
jump in and I'll take over the presentation. There may be an unstable um, connection at this point. So what Kristen was alluding to was after you get into the portal, you're going to be directed to make multiple submissions of information, and that will include forms or drawings. In this particular case, for any sign permit application that's going to be submitted, we're going to be looking for some specific forms that are mandatory for us to administer the permit to you and have our communications back and forth. So the forms that we will be asking for are a permit application authorization form. That's the form that allows you as an applicant, if you're not the owner, to act on behalf of the owner to submit the permit. We're going to need a signed permit authorization and an applicable law checklist. The applicable law checklist, when you open it, is going to look very large and it's going to have a lot of check boxes, but I don't want you to be overwhelmed by it. They're pretty standard questions, and they are going to ask you if any applicable law actually applies to your particular sign permit. And a majority of the time, there will not be a significant amount of applicable law. But as Kristen alluded to earlier, if you're in a heritage district, that's something that we want you to identify at the forefront. We rather know that you know before we have to tell you about a requirement that is available. And that's what that form really does. It's also a declaration saying, I have obtained a clearance before you even come to us for a permit. The last thing that you would need is a commitment to general review. These are required in some circumstances where the act requires the involvement of a professional, mainly a professional engineer when we're talking about loading for certain wall signs, given the size, or ground signage. Okay. Now, the drawings that we're going to require, I think this is where some of our applicants um, really fall a little bit short and cost themselves a little bit extra time in not preparing the appropriate drawings for what is required. And Kristen touched on this a little bit earlier about some of the information that we're going to need in those drawings to determine if something is compliant or not. So a little bit extra effort at the beginning or to your design professionals that are providing you this information on the drawings is really key to a smooth process. Because the last thing that we want in the building standards department is to cost you any additional time before we can issue a permit. And I say any additional time because if we have to send something back to you, which you have to send to your designer or whoever's preparing the drawings, that review cycle is going to cost us time because we have minimum service levels that we have to adhere to for all of our other clientele, in addition to your permit. So if we can reduce those amount of review cycles with uh, properly submitted drawings with all the information we need, it's really going to be a smooth process. And what I would always ask to you is that at the end of this presentation, like Kristen said, we're going to provide you with some contact information. So at any time that you think that, oh, maybe there's some additional information I may need to provide on the drawings, please feel free to reach out to us at any time and we'll tell you what information is there, if that information is going to be adequate, okay? Some of the drawings that we're speaking to specifically are a good site plan and key plan that shows us the exact location of the sign that's going to be submitted. This is key for us in placing where this actual structure or wall sign is going to be. And like Kristen spoke to earlier, the performance standards of the bylaw really have to be met by you providing this drawing because it's the only way we're going to be able to determine compliance. The elevations that you are providing and the sign drawings themselves, any specifications. This is what I spoke to a little bit earlier, being the review times and fees. In general, for 2023, the fee for a sign is $260 and $358 for ground signs, which is really signs with a structural review that would involve a little bit more work on our end. I spoke to our service levels earlier, and this is 10 business days. So from the time that you make your application within our portal and you make your payment, we're going to be looking at your application within 10 business days. And within those 10 business days, we're either going to do one of two things. We're going to either determine compliance and issue you a permit, or we're going to make a determination that there's non-compliance in the way of either zoning with the sign being some type of applicable law, the sign bylaw itself, or any Ontario Building Code prescriptive requirement for signage. So in the event that there is non-compliance, that will be sent back to you within the 10 business days, in which time you will have to resubmit to us. And this is what I spoke to a little bit earlier, being the review cycles being limited and the less time it's going to take you to obtain your permit. Once you make a resubmission to us, we're going to be looking at that within 5 to 10 business days. Okay, so you can see how the time can add up very quickly. So like I said earlier, having your drawing submitted in a good fashion with all the information that we require is really going to make it a seamless process for you. Okay. Non-compliant signs. This is something we get asked a fair bit. If our review indicates non-compliance with the file, it will be determined and it will be returned to you for correction. And a list of concerns will be provided to you. Some of the times, for a sign variance, it's really not something that's recommended. The sign variance is available in limited applications, and the fee for that is $653. And this requires DSC or council approval as a requirement. This is going to be your main takeaway of the whole presentation. The information that you see on the screen right now are specific contacts that you can get right to an individual staff member that's going to be able to address any concerns or questions that you have. And I would ask that you reach out to these numbers and contacts anytime that you have it. One of the biggest obstacles that I hear from any of our clientele or stakeholders is, who do I contact? So if there's anything that you take away from this presentation and you want to screenshot this and put it on your desktop, go ahead and do that. And like I said, reaching out to us is a good idea on anything, even if it's pre-planning. We're here to assist you. We know that you're the drivers of our economy in Markham, and anything that we can do to make your process a little bit easier and a little bit quicker, we're on board to do so. And I'll open it up to questions.
So I'm looking at our Q&A chat box. We're not seeing any questions. Maybe folks are shy, but let's just open up the floor for anyone who might have any question. Please unmute yourself. This is your chance. Topic is quite technical, so you may have different questions, but please don't be shy.
I have a question. So we are opening the Main Street Markham Animal Clinic in Markham Heritage District. I know we are about to get the approval for the building. Is it like, should I first apply the signage or just put the temporary signage and the process will start by itself? Or what do you think? What is the best chance for me?
First of all, hi, Kristen here. Thank you, Daniel, for finishing up. I've had a technical glitch in the most inopportune time possible. And if you don't mind, I can field that. Yes, you will need to submit your building or sign permit application prior to putting up any signage on the building. So you will need to initiate that application yourself. Once you have, many persons work with a sign company in order to fabricate the sign. And as part of that process, it is very common to also have that same group make the submission on your behalf. And that is often recommended because, as business owners, you have a number of other priorities, and this is not necessarily your area of expertise. So certainly we recommend that you engage your sign company early. And, if you have approval or you're working your way through the construction or building permit process, and that is imminent or going well, you absolutely would like to reach out to your sign company, get those drawings prepared and underway, and make those arrangements and ask them to provide you with evidence that they have obtained a copy of a sign permit
Okay.
prior to installation in order to just prevent any, any issues along the way.
Yeah. Okay. So do you have any suggestions of whom we have to contact, signage people or anybody? Because it's a heritage district, and Markham Heritage District is completely different than any other. So that's why I don't want to delay more. It will be easier for us if there is anybody who is working with some contacts, leaving some contact, and the cost. I don't know what will be the cost, and it's particular type of material we need to use, and all those things. Just that is where I'm just, if I get the answers, it will be quicker.
Yeah, typically we don't recommend companies. It's an unfortunate position to say we don't want to be seen as promoting one business above another, or have anything in that respect. So I would encourage you to speak with, if you have other businesses that you, have
Already
in the
yes.
area or otherwise, or with your business group, your business improvement group, they may
Mhm.
have some suggestions as to who has done signage in the past in the neighborhood. But otherwise, there are a number of companies out there that through, some research online or otherwise, you can find, a good sign company to undertake that work for you.
Yeah, thanks, Krishna. So I have one more question. Is that this signage is only for the outside thing, right? Do you concern about what you are putting at the behind the reception or anything? No or yes?
Excellent question. We do not control or regulate interior signage that is not intended to be seen from outside the premises. So if you have a sign, for example, above your reception area,
Yeah.
indicating that it is the location of reception and just providing that wayfinding to your clientele, that is fine. The
Okay.
exception to that rule, I would say sometimes, is when people install signage in the window that is directly facing the exterior when it is
Okay.
installed to the interior, but is meant to be seen or to serve the function of
Okay.
advertising to persons walking by. That is under our control still. But
Anything
interiors,
inside, fine.
yeah, if it's not intended to be seen from outside of the premises, it's fine. You do not need to obtain a sign permit for that type of signage.
Thank you,
Okay.
Kristen. I see that there's quite a number of questions in the audience, so I've been watching and trying to give some order and sequence. So I'm just going to continue to facilitate the Q&A and making sure people get the responses. So I did see Neve, and then Sonia, and then Abbas and Heather. So thank you for putting your hands up. So let's go with that order. Neve.
Hi. I know that the focus of today was not on the temporary signage, but I was just wondering if you could speak briefly about the status of A-frames on Main Street, Unionville, and any processes around them.
The best point of contact truly would be that on the final page of the slide. And I'm not certain if you took that down when Daniel had it up or if we need to return to that. Because their processes and their department is fully separate from the building department, I'll admit,
Okay.
I'm not well versed in them. There is, like I said, the bylaw that's available online, 2002-94, does have provisions related to those mobile signs. You can go on and view those. But if there are questions about how that's going to function, how to, the fees related to those, etc., I would recommend speaking to that group directly. They also have a bit of a web page as well that you can look up. If you sort of mobile signs Markham, you should be able to get yourself there. But the contact details through
you
the
can
bylaw enforcement group are the best contact.
and you can always reach out directly to Kristen and myself, and we can get you in contact with the right people. If we're talking about a policy framework or an update on an agenda here, then we can most definitely get you to the right people, and there's something we can use as a takeaway here.
Okay, great. And just, by the way, could you put the link to the bylaw in the chat, just so that we could
I will put two
copy it?
things actually into the chat.
Yeah.
I was going to put our portal link, which will bring you to how you actually submit the application in the chat. And I also put the link to the bylaw for you, okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks. Sonia?
Yeah, I actually have the same question as me just now, but we would like to understand more about the A-frame, because some of the businesses on the street, they receive like the notification or warning from the department last Saturday. So these A-frames are very important to the main street, because many businesses, their location is just a little bit underneath the main street, along the main street. So I walked along the main street yesterday, and they already collected all those A-frame temporary from the main street, but they still would like to see if they are allowed to have the A-frame at least during the summer. And the board has also gone through a motion last week if we will request the City of Markham to allow A-frame along the main street, so that it does help a lot for the businesses. Yeah, that's it.
Like I spoke to earlier, I think that what we have to observe in this particular setting is this is more of an information setting for you in regards to how you're achieving a permit. It's really not geared towards any policy formation or policy direction. But I would encourage you, please reach out to me directly, and those are questions that we can ask at a higher level as a takeaway. This may not be the best venue for that question to be answered, but we most definitely will get you some of the answers you want, Sonia.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Daniel. Next, Abbas. I may say that wrong, but
That's correct. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this informative presentation. So I have two quick questions. The first one, maybe I didn't have a chance to go through the bylaw, but I was wondering if the sign is not required, it's not what we say, it's not in the scope of the building code. It still needs a building permit?
Yes, it will still require a sign permit regardless, as long as it is a regulated sign under our bylaw. There are some administrative and other sort of technical provisions in there that will direct that, with the exception of those obtaining certain licensing approvals, you will be required. So like I said, for permanent signs, ground signs, wall signs, those affixed to the building, those attached permanently in the ground. And for development signs, you do require a sign permit regardless of whether or not the OBC requirements prescribe such.
And if the sign required a structural design, is it reviewed by a structural engineer in your department or no?
Yes. Yes, it would be.
Okay. And the last...
Abbas, I'll just jump in right there. I know that you're a knowledgeable individual in terms of structural reviews, but essentially, I think it's important to point out that if that review component is present, then the manner in which we dictate who's doing that review or reviewing those documents could be one of our structural engineers, or it could be one of our buildings plans examiners, depending on the complexity of the design.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much
for that.
And thank you. And last question regarding the applicable law that is mentioned, regarding the sign, maybe the Heritage Act some kind of consideration, but I was wondering if you come across with some instances that applicable law apply to your case. I mean, if you're on top of your mind, know some of the instances that requires applicable law or trigger that, I really appreciate to just share with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a number of instances where applicable law could come into effect. One of the more recent you may know of is the Building Transit Faster Act. So areas where signage is perhaps proposed within the transit corridor or within MTO. regulated lands, there may be requirements to obtain certain approvals for signage within those areas as well. So what we ask for as part of a submission is an applicable law checklist identifying that, and staff will also then review and confirm whether those applicable law requirements have been met and whether they've been accurately identified.
And I can add on to that also in regards to what Chris had just said, especially to do with the Better Faster Transit Act. A lot of the times those requirements are only going to be applicable for sign installations such as ground signs or anywhere there's going to be excavation, drilling, or boring. Regardless, though, if you do have a wall sign that requires a permit, where you will need to achieve some type of clearance from Metrolinx, and that will be in the form of them having you make a formal permit submission or contact with them once it's identified by yourself or us, saying that they don't require an approval of any kind. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very
Great.
much for clarification and your answers. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you both Daniel and Abbas. And I saw Heather Cook, you had your hand up and it's down. So I'm assuming you're still here and maybe you still have a question for us. So please feel free.
I am. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone for facilitating this presentation as well. My question was mostly answered after Sonia's question. I had just been wondering on behalf of some of the BIA businesses who we could speak to directly about more specific regulations. I'm referring to specifically A-frame signs. But also I noticed, Swathi, when you were speaking and asking your question, we are your business improvement area. So I'm just going to, the chat was disabled for me for a while, but I'm going to put my email in the chat and I would be happy to connect you with some business owners and that you could get some information on who would be good contacts to help you with your signage. And you can reach out to me anytime and I just love to connect as well. And that's all. Well,
Thank you so much.
I'm just wondering if Heather's frozen out or.
I did freeze for a second.
Okay.
But that was my only comment. Thank you. Just a little bit of lag.
Great.
Thanks everyone, and thanks Swathi.
No, that's fantastic, Heather. And I've the pleasure of working closely with Heather Cook as well in my capacity as economic development in our office. And Heather is indeed is a resource, Swathi, and I'm so glad that she connected with you to provide that level of support. So this is awesome. Do we have any more questions on the floor? If we're all satisfied with today's information, I know it's a lot, it's technical, but I promise you, we are here to support you. So feel free to reach out to us. Daniel, would it be possible for you to throw back that slide? There was one slide that has the contact info for various resources, and I think that's pretty useful.
Yes, would you like me to throw it up for a
Yes,
second?
yes, please throw it up and folks can take a photo of that before we conclude.
Excellent. 1 second.
Yeah. And take advantage of, the links thrown in the chat box as well. And again, our economic development office is, we work very closely with building. And so if you go through us, we'll help navigate you to the right resource internally as well.
Is that available for everybody to see?
Yep, it's on. Okay. So with that, I'd like to conclude this session and give you back your time, about 15 minutes. And this is really incredible because we never have a webinar where people actually get their time back and, they get all the information they need. So thank you very much to.
Can I also add
yes.
one thing quickly, and I think it may be beneficial for everybody that's attended here today.
Sure.
I'm sure you have a contact list. If you can send out my contact information and Kristen's contact information directly to everybody in the group, so any of the questions that were raised here that we weren't able to necessarily answer in regards to the policy formation or framework, we can definitely, they'll be able to get in touch with us very easily.
Yes, and I was going to mention that this session is recorded, and so we will following this webinar, we will be sending out a recording of this video of the content, and we will include Daniel and Kristen's information as well. And before we sign off, I like to express a special thanks, not just to Daniel and Kristen, but from our building standard department, but also to our very a special, student, Mona Chen, who is a York University Schulich School of Business student who's been interning with us. And she has been an incredible resource to help us put this event together, from marketing to logistic and just facilitating behind the scene today. So Mona, thank you very much for all your help. Everybody have a fantastic day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.